This is The Discourse with Dr. Ken.
Another episode of the Discourse with Dr. Ken, and today we have a very interesting, if you ask me, topic that is, something that must resonate with everybody who has anything to do with life activities and both enjoyment and moving around and then enjoying spaces that we call hospitality. So today's topic is the importance of hospitality. We'll look at the importance, we'll look at the challenges, and look at how Nigeria has been able to take advantage of the potentials around this industry.
This is The Discourse with Dr. Ken.
My guest today is Belinda Nwosu. I should put it in full, Dr. Belinda Nwosu, because she ended actually. How are you, Belinda?
Very well, Dr. Ken. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, fantastic. Let me take a bit of her profile, let me summarize it. Dr. Belinda Nwosu is a faculty member of the Organizational Behavior and HRM department at the Lagos Business School. She holds a doctorate in business administration from the University of Southampton, UK, with other degrees in hospitality and statistics. Belinda Nwosu has engaged in several initiatives to develop human capital for the hospitality industry and for the services sectors in general. She has extensive experience in design, development, training interventions, and speaking engagement. The PhD you have, the doctorate you have, is it in what field?
So I have a DBA, doctorate in business administration, and my thesis was around organizational behavior.
Okay.
I was considering employees and organizations and the interaction, the behaviors between both parties. The sector that I'm most interested in is the hospitality industry. So of course, that's always the context in my research, the hospitality industry. Yeah, that I've probably worked and researched for close to 22 years now.
Really? Fantastic. So yes, that's where you are highly sought after, and then we made sure we were able to get you on the program, because we try to bring the best, no matter the topic and the sector we decide to discuss, we try to bring everybody that matters. And in this case, I think when we talk hospitality, we are happy, and it's a pleasure to have you on the show. So and I'm happy you talked about culture, because I don't know about you, but I think it's everything. It's at the center of everything. When people talk culture, for me, culture is even ahead of strategy, because it actually, like they say, culture is strategy for breakfast. So if you get the culture right, then you can devise it. It can become culture of excellence. You use culture for productivity. You use culture for everything, even the HR you're talking about, isn't it? So it's all about culture, the way we do things. I want to believe that I could be a good student in your class.
Absolutely. At the center of everything is people.
Yes.
You can't have a culture without people. And as you rightly said, culture will eat strategy for breakfast. If you have the wrong people in place,
Yes.
That's really a task in futility.
Okay. So let's dive into hospitality. So when we say hospitality industry, especially in Nigeria, what exactly are we talking about? Is it just hotels and restaurants, or has it evolved into something bigger? Because when people hear hospitality, what first comes to their mind is hotel, restaurant. In advertising they call it HoReCa. Hotel, restaurant, and cafes.
Yeah, typically that is what it is understood as, especially in our environment. Hotels, restaurants, food, accommodation, and that's sadly where for many people it ends. But like you rightly said, the concept is evolving and has evolved. For those people who have more experience in travel and moving around, it's not just about a bed to sleep in or a meal to have. It's about the experience, right? So hospitality has evolved in terms of its delivery and what it captures. So given the global village status of today's world, we understand that hospitality underpins every service provider, right? So every provision of service has the concept of hospitality, delivering exceptional service. So I'll just give you a very quick example. I spoke with the dean of EHL, the Hospitality Business School in Lausanne in Switzerland, and they're number one in the world in terms of hospitality education, management education. And he said that they're losing their graduates of hospitality to the Swiss banking sector. So the banks come in and then they sweep up all the graduates in the hospitality business school. Why? Because they've understood that people in hospitality understand the concept of service. So hospitality is about service provision in whatever form or guise it comes in. So that's a lot more than just the hotel and the restaurant that we're familiar with.
So I'm happy because I hear you mention Switzerland. For those of us who have had the privilege of moving around, we know that this concept called hospitality is the way it is perceived and the expectations people have for it in the Western world, Europe and America, is quite different from what we have in Nigeria. And so how did we evolve? Because what I see here is this really hospitality or is something else, or is Nigeria made hospitality?
Interesting that you'd say that. I think hospitality is a human experience, and everybody knows what it feels like to be cared for people to express affection and to receive that at the same time. So I think it transcends cultures, epochs, geographies. Hospitality has the concept of giving and receiving, right? Or whatever service that is. And perhaps here we could talk about part of my research that I'm currently delving into, traditional African hospitality. What are the artifacts that represent hospitality in Africa?
Okay.
We're very quick, really, I think, in our culture, in our environment in Africa, to receive people and to welcome people into the home. Think about going to your village, for example.
Yeah.
When you visit, you knock on the door, you're received, you're welcome, food is brought out, drink. Everybody wants to make sure you're comfortable.
Yeah.
It comes natural to us. Sadly, when we try to transmit this in the commercial sphere, commercial hospitality, we kind of lose it. And that's something that I'm trying to understand more deeply. Why are we naturally very hospitable, but when it comes to the commercial sphere, the gaps begin to appear? So I think it's a very human thing. It's just that perhaps in the Western context, they have perfected the art of it, which we need to do. Let's commercialize what comes natural to us. So I think we do understand hospitality, but we don't understand it as a means to run a business, quite frankly.
Yes, I'm happy you mentioned that, because we'll dive deep into that, because I think the average African struggles with the concept of commerce, the concept of business, understanding it. And I'm talking up from the position of reason for being. Why do we set up businesses? What is it for? And then what are the instruments of business? What are the factors that are necessary so that a business can run, establish itself, solidify, and maybe even perpetuate it? So I think the African struggles with that. But I'm sure during the course of conversation, we'll throw more light and illuminate these areas. But let's discuss the more of economy and the economic impact and challenges. Let me ask you straight. Why do Nigerian hotels, for example, often charge international rates while delivering subpar services?
Interesting question. I'm not sure what you mean by charging international rates.
Yeah, because when you approach, because I know hospitality is a big span, like we've started with the program, it goes beyond hotels, but I want to start with hotels. You see, if you go to most 3-star, 4-star, quote unquote hotels in Nigeria, when you approach them, they throw at you the prices. The prices they throw at you is standardized. Standardized to international levels. In fact, some of them are denominated in dollars or other foreign currencies and just translated into naira. But the services you get is not concomitant. It's not the same. So why do you think they think it is okay? Why do Nigerian hotels charge this? When it comes to charges, they are international. When it comes to service delivery, they are local.
Yeah. This is an recurring conversation that we've had around the space of room rates. First of all, it's not legal to charge in USD, foreign exchange, right? Foreign currency. You must charge in naira and collect naira. I think That's quite clear. But I understand that, of course, you're saying in comparison to what you would actually spend in Forex. So let's look at it from two perspectives. We have the international regional brand hotels. That means hotels that have an international management company. They could be management or franchise, managed or franchised. And then we have the non-branded, all right, that exist as independents, right? So if the question you're asking is why are the rates so high? Having worked with hotel management agreements, carried out research in that area and written a few case studies on that, brands come with a package. Brands come with management or franchise fees. And those fees and the loans that have been taken to set up and to furnish and to finish these locally built hotels, but to the brand standards, you must meet brand standards in order to carry their brand on your hotel. These loans need to be serviced, and all of them are dollar dominated, right? So imagine that you're a local hotel owner who has signed up a management agreement with an international brand. It's really heavy. The fees are in dollars.
Yeah.
The loans, most probably you would have taken dollar loans in order to complete that investment. How do you pay that back in Naira? With the current situation, I feel for owners who have taken on this burden. So from that perspective, infrastructure maintenance is a key factor to having those rates. We don't even need to go into the line of supply chain. You know, there are certain items you must have on the buffet, for example. Some of those items are not sourced locally. You can't find them locally. You need to import them, vast majority. Where are you going to get your cheddar cheese from? It needs to be imported. So these, I think, are some of the issues that influence just how high some
Those
of these
international
rates.
charges. Okay.
I think also with the independent hotels as well, meaning the non-branded local hotels, they also face supply chain issues, infrastructure maintenance, the manpower development and the payroll, etc. Just generating electricity to make sure that the generator is on, or at least the solar panels are, charged. That's a lot of money. So I would like to look at it from both sides, from the owner's perspective of maintaining these, and also the fact that they need to meet brand standards to a certain extent and meet operational needs. So there's no justification for those who charge premium rates and don't have the infrastructure. Now that's a different conversation.
Yeah, that's for me the pain point, and I'm sure it's a pain point for a lot of other people who patronize these hotels or cafes or even restaurants, because yes, I can understand the translation of costs, especially those fixed costs. Somebody has to pay for it, and the business has to run, isn't it? But if if a customer can swallow that, can take that and say, okay, it is what it is, I'm going to pay it. How come the pricing is standardized, but the service delivery and the service itself, anyhowness is thrown at you?
To be fair, there are many hotels in our country, in our environment, that are riding on legacies.
Okay.
Dead and gone, and they still have that pulling power when it comes to custom by just the mere mention of their names. The level of service is not commensurate with the rates.
Yes.
I totally agree.
So you agree with me on that?
Totally.
So if anybody listening out there, if you are in this industry, whether in a hotel, whether a restaurant or cafes or wherever, it is a pain point that needs to be dealt with, isn't it?
Definitely.
So how difficult is it to deal with this?
If you're an owner, you have to understand the concept of hospitality and what it is you're delivering. I find a lot of hotel owners are simply business people.
Okay.
This is one more business that I can go into. It's a cash cow for me. And the profile, some other research that I worked on, the profile of a typical hotel owner in our environment, and this is not just in Nigeria, this is across sub-Saharan Africa. The typical hotel owner will be an individual who has interests in other sectors, mining, manufacturing, etc., oil and gas. and sees the ownership of a hotel asset as something to boost their ego or to leave as a legacy for the family.
Okay.
So it's not a primary business, but it is just an ego asset that they can hold on to and then pass on. And especially if it's branded internationally, there's that added factor of I own ABC or XYZ. So that disconnect between the ownership and the intention for actually owning a hotel makes the difference. If somebody goes into the hotel business, understanding that they're here to deliver services and they're here to give the customers the best, that's a different mindset. There are a lot of owners who have no idea about hospitality or the need to deliver excellent services, but they're in the business and they own the hotel.
Okay.
So it's a two-edged sword.
This is The Discourse with Dr. Ken.
Let me go to Airbnb. How has the rise of Airbnb and shortless apartments in places like, say, Lagos and Abuja disrupted traditional hospitality? And who are the major beneficiaries from this disruption?
I think Airbnb is the best thing that has happened to us, not just here, but all over the world.
Okay.
We have the diversification of choice,
Okay.
right? Something tailored to my specific needs. I remember being in university in Southampton and wondering how I would, a DBA is usually part-time, so shuttling between Lagos and the UK and thinking, where can I stay? I don't need to rent an apartment. Airbnb solved all my problems. And I'm thinking in the context of other people, other users, it's just so flexible in terms of meeting your specific needs for a specific time, which will change over a period, but you always have something for someone. Now we think about the traditional hospitality projects and we see how everything has to be according to a script. And that's changing. That's out of the window. People have more options now. And it's interesting to see how well-known hotel brands have recognized that they're becoming irrelevant and are moving to meet this market need. So we have some hotels, even within Nigeria, that are including apartment facilities to cater to the needs of today's travelers. So the disruption has been absolute, and I think it's a good thing because that's when innovation becomes, and that's when people get out of their comfort zone and begin to look at the customer as the center of the transaction, which should actually be transformational and not just about the exchange of money for a room. The consumers are the real beneficiaries. We now have the ability to vote with our feet and to go where we find the comfort and our needs met.
Yes, and there's a wider benefit too, especially for property owners who hitherto did not build the properties for the sake of hospitality. But because of this evolution, because of this innovation, they now benefit and are able to maximize and optimize the revenues they can get out of their properties, isn't it? And reduce redundancy, isn't it?
Absolutely. Think about now the trend in mixed use development. So we could have a hotel within the same development. We could have short-let apartments. We could have retail. So, investors are able to maximize their properties, not just to think it's a hotel and it's a hotel. No, they could be office space. They could be short-let apartments. And that's a win-win for everybody.
So what did you study in University of Lagos?
So my trajectory is quite interesting. So my first degree was in math and statistics.
Okay.
So I'm a statistician, and as a result, most of my research is quantitative. I love crunching the numbers. It was during my youth service in Ibadan that I discovered hospitality as a potential career path. I taught in a technical school for a year, and then I went on to do a master's and a bachelor in hospitality in the UK. And after I returned, I was in an academic institution, technical, we'll call it the Vocational Education and Training Institution here in Lagos, where I worked for about 15 years developing young women in hospitality. It was only after those years that I finally reflected on the fact that in order to make a change in this sector, especially around manpower development. We need to be talking to the decision makers. I think that informed my decision to do the DBA and solve that industry problem, and zoned it down to organizational behavior. Now, how do organizations behave? And that's just driven my research and my teaching since then.
Yeah, great. Because I asked that question deliberately because there may be some girl child listening there or mothers who would need to shape or at least help influence the shaping of their daughter's trajectory when it comes to what to study and how to relate with numbers, because a lot of young people have tendency to run away from numbers. But if you are listening, you are hearing Belinda, it is a product of some entity that has appreciated numbers over time. So you could see hindsight, you could see insight, and you can see her being able to foresight is because the basis for that, the foundation is that of data, and it comes from numbers, isn't it? So well done, Belinda. So now there's a message that's saying that the way people in hospitality treat their workers has a direct correlation and relationship with the quality of service they eventually turn over. Do you agree with that?
I do, in a sense. I remember having a conversation with some colleagues, and I proposed this idea that we are a slave culture. I mean, you don't throw away 400 years of slavery without leaving an impact in the culture. And I was just trying to understand why there's such a distaste for service within our environment. You typically hear this: is it because I'm doing this for you? Is it because I'm standing here? Just almost a very strong distaste for being in that receiving end, that I'm the person delivering a service. Who wants to be treated poorly? We observe it a lot. And I've literally lived in and out of hotels with my work and the things that I do. And we notice how we, the consumers, the guests, treat service staff very badly in a way that is dehumanizing. I would also speak to some of the organizational practices around pay, around working conditions, around safeguarding of the vulnerable. Those are big issues. So now this doesn't make it attractive to anybody as a career path.
Okay.
Right. So it's generally seen as a stopgap. I finished my JAM, my post-secondary school, and I'm waiting for my JAM results. What can I do in the interim? Hospitality, right? So I'm not coming in because I see there's something I can develop and become better in, or to deliver service. I see it as a way of earning money before I move on. So all of that, combined with the fact that there's really a deep-seated distaste for being in a service position, of course, it's going to impact the industry. Now, the pool you are recruiting from is a pool where people are thinking about you in a temporary perspective. I remember one hospitality leader, a hotel general manager, who walked a guest out of his hotel for treating his front desk associate badly.
Okay.
And that was edifying. And think about the knock-on effect on the rest of the workforce. They have their back covered by the leaders, right? There's also another incident of a room attendant who was threatened with sacking by the hotel owner if he took up the case that he was physically assaulted by a celebrity who was in that hotel. All right, and was made to keep quiet and to forget about it. So again, that also creates a culture. Who wants to be treated that badly? So I think industry regulators, associations, we need to take this up seriously. If you treat the people poorly, then the knock-on effect is the quality of service we have in our industry.
Yes.
We just wrote another piece of research with my colleagues in the Philippines and in Brazil. We co-authored Fair Work Practices in the Global South. And so this isn't a Nigerian problem. It's a general problem where people in hospitality are not attracted necessarily to the profession, or they're just there for the money.
Okay.
But the working conditions are abysmal across board. That needs to change. It's the same story. You cannot give what you don't have. And if you don't esteem the profession, then you don't esteem service.
Yeah. So for majority of investors or even people in practice in this sector, they may just see it as gloom, but if I were in this sector, I would see it as opportunity. Imagine if I isolate myself and do the proper thing, treat my staff well, get them better paid, then I would have created a niche for myself. So I
Absolutely.
would have had a unique selling proposition, and then introduce swagger pricing. People would come, they will stay, they pay, they eat, and they will pay whatever price you put in there. After all, people don't wear Rolex because they want to be punctual.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is going to be a very well kept secret. People who discover excellent service try to keep quiet about it so that they keep it as it is and they don't tell anybody about it.
Yes.
But it's so easy. But I won't preempt what we're discussing, but definitely we are able to find a niche in the market where it's so easy to be exceptional because the service out there is so bad.
Yeah.
That by just doing the right thing.
Yeah, the basic right things,
makes you exceptional. Yes, just do the basics.
Yeah. So, when we started, you mentioned Switzerland and what was what you could find in Switzerland. In fact, as we speak, according to you anyway, the situation is such that the financial industry, especially the banks in Switzerland, deliberately target hospitality graduates. They sweep them over
Correct.
and move them to their sector. But the reverse is the case in Nigeria and in most African countries, and I get why they do that, because in Switzerland and larger Europe, the people in financial industry understand that they are not in the service of finance. They are not in the service of banking or in the business of finance or banking. They're in the business of service, first and foremost.
Correct.
Banking is just a platform, and then therefore, if you understand service and your product now is banking, then the excellence follows, isn't it? So they understand it. But it's something people here have not been able to process. They just tell you we're in banking, we're in insurance, we're in aviation. No, you're not in the business of aviation or insurance. You're in the business of service. But that takes me back to Nigeria. What explains the paradox then, where hospitality graduates in Nigeria remain unemployed, why hotels and restaurants claim they can't find qualified staff?
Now there, I think the gap exists between what competencies, education, and training prepares graduates. I mean, what the competencies that they're prepared for, to acquire, and what industry needs, right? So think about it. You are in a vocational education training institution and you have your curriculum, you have it designed for certain outcomes, graduate outcomes, and then you have industry on the other end. They are dealing with guests and their needs and the evolving nature of the market. And when the two are disconnected, what happens is the graduates come into the market and the industry wants to mop them up, but there's no match.
Okay.
Right? We have an obsolete curriculum. Quite frankly, I remember one experience I had where in the curriculum, which at that time the government had, the regulatory body had already designed the curriculum. We're talking about a telex. And I don't think even in my life I'd ever seen a telegram, and there was a telex, how to use a telex and I was shocked, right? And this was the time of computing, right? So the disconnect between industry and education is one of the problems we're having. So you say they're a hospitality graduate. Okay, so what did they study and how does it relate to the fact that Airbnb is the new sliced bread in the market, So I think collaboration needs to happen. And it's very simple. It doesn't cost a lot of money for industry to sit at the table with education and draw up a curriculum that works, for both parties, right? The technical curriculum must be informed by the needs of industry. And that's not happening.
Okay.
So we flood the market with people without competencies for the industry. And so they have to go through that process of re-educating and retraining. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of resources. And a simple solution.
Okay. So, great. I have another, I don't know whether it's a comment or a question, but it's from Belinda and she's texting from Oniru in Lagos. So she's saying, how does the Nigerian factor of using untrained family members instead of professionals impact our hospitality standards? Basically saying that people just build these things called hospitality, especially hotels and restaurants, stuff them with family members.
There is something called, in the strategy literature, agency theory, all right? So where you have a principal and you have an agent, all right? So the agent has been employed by the principal to take care of their resources. So think about the context of a hotel organization, a hotel and its management company, all right? So we have the owner who has given up his investment to a company to manage it. That's not a very easy thing to do. And so for some people, the checks and balances that they have in place are to put a family member in there just to make sure that their interests are being taken care of. It's laudable, it's understandable that somebody would want to do this. But sadly, not all family members necessarily have the knowledge and the experience to oversee an asset like a hotel or a restaurant or whatever.
Okay.
And sometimes that becomes an obstacle for progress within that unit. Okay, so decisions are made more emotionally rather than based on fact and what needs to be done. So I'd say, yes, there is a basis for people wanting to have family in there to watch out for their interests. But I think that would only work if that family member is trained or knowledgeable about the business. And the two don't necessarily always happen that way. In fact, sometimes it is the family members who do the owners in with some of their practices. Some of them could be intentional and some maybe just out of a lack of knowledge. So the Nigerian factor has a basis to protect one's assets. But if we're going to do that, then let's do it intentionally and prepare those family members to actually do that properly. Emotions will not bring profits. And I think that's just...
Okay, I like that. Emotions will not bring profit, isn't it? It just brings emotional benefit, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A
So
perception of benefits.
of benefit, isn't it? Okay, so let me take you back home, and I want to go to the States now because we live in a country where, by the way, just last week our 2025 budget has been projected, and we're talking about some trillions here. Some say 47 or almost 48 trillion. When you hear those kind of numbers, it feels humongous to somebody who is a semi-illiterate or who does not understand what the numbers versus the real value and how far that can take you in terms of development within a space of time that is 12 months. For a country this size and the population of this size, considering our deficits, both in human and infrastructural space. So when you say 47 trillion, it looks big. But if you compare that to the EPL, the English Premier League budget for one season, and convert that to Naira, you find out where Nigeria is. So is an industry like hospitality, are we paying the right attention? Do we understand that it can actually help us expand our GDP? If yes, have you seen? Are you feeling it that people understand this? That we need to look beyond this oil and look at an industry like hospitality.
We are currently in a position where hospitality as an industry is running on all cylinders without any direction. Okay. I think of it from this perspective. If we had a holistic strategic plan for developing hospitality, it would be competing with some of the bigger sectors that we have, or rather contributing. We're not competing, we're all contributing, right, to the national pool. When we don't have that strategy and we just have silos, okay, so we have people that are working in the hotel sector, the restaurants, we have industry associations countering each other, we have people at the table who are not speaking with each other. We have this kind of dysfunction. I'd like to compare it to a case I worked on, the Rwanda MICE sector. The MICE is the meetings, incentives, conventions, and exhibitions. It's basically the meetings industry.
Okay.
From the genocide in 1994, Rwanda, up until 2004, Rwanda became one of the top 3 destinations for MICE, the meetings industry in Africa. So it was competing with Cairo, Cape Town, and then Kigali. And when I think about Kigali and its size and compare it to Lagos, I think it's painful to see that we have so much potential to develop and yet we're not doing it. So we carried out some research. What was driving all of this? And at the basis of all of it is the intentionality. We need regulation, we need legislation, we need the government to create the enabling environment for businesses to thrive. All right, so that was one of the key factors for the development of Rwanda as a MICE destination. Create the enabling environment.
Okay.
Government has no business running business, right?
Okay.
Just let the private sector do that, but give us what we need, and we will run with it. On a small scale, there's still research being carried out in this space. Remember COVID and how it led to the explosion of the online food vendors. I find many people now have gotten into the habit of just ordering food. Right? Imagine if this is synthesized, this is brought into a strategic plan, and the infrastructure needed to make this develop even further. If this happens, we're talking about a multi-million, naira sector that could go a lot higher, right? So the intentionality of government is important. Step back from actually running the things and create the environment. And we also have the experience in the creative industry. Just look at how it moved. Remember growing up, I still remember growing up when the first Nollywood movie came out. I think it was
it Living in Bondage?
Living in Bondage. You know, I actually grew up in Enugu,
So
and there was the video club.
I've guessed your
the two
demographics,
brothers.
age-wise.
The cat is out of the bag. And we had a video club, the only video club, movie people, and it was one of the owners, one of the kids and all that was actually acting in that. So I look at that and I look at where Nollywood is today, you know. So that's the power and the capacity that we have, even in the hospitality sector, to become that and even more. But we need support. That's what we need. Don't run the businesses for us. We need support. So it can happen.
It can happen. Okay. So I like you to deep in something because you mentioned Rwanda and I've been there a couple of times. And for me, it's not a wonder. I just see product of planning and some government that is deliberate in what they want to do. And you talked about that in your last statement. But if we deepen that, what would it take Nigeria hospitality industry to compete effectively with other African countries, especially Rwanda? In fact, even our neighbors Ghana here, because the experiences you get is quite different. It's night and day. What, in your opinion, because I'm sure you're well traveled, what is your opinion? What are those blocks we must begin to put together to even have what look like competition? How much more getting to the levels where they are?
It's almost very painful to even mention that I would be competing with Rwanda and Ghana. Just the scale of those countries compared to Nigeria, it's mind-boggling. The dysfunction is one of the critical things that we need to put right. Could it be because we're so big? I don't think so. Time and time again, we've had this conversation about working in silos. One administration comes in with a certain policy, it's put in place and things start working, and then another administration comes in and then everything that has been done in the past is swept away and then a new policy begins. Without mentioning, I know of and I have worked with a couple of colleagues from a particular part of the country where there was a tourism development, and we saw the potential for that, but that's dead today, it's moribund today. And again, behind it is the lack of cohesion between the different parties that can make a difference. So if there's one solution that I would suggest, there can't be just one solution, but my solution I would like to propose is the intentionality of each one. Do we want this to work? That's where we need to start the conversation. If we want it to work, then let's get to the table and let's have a conversation and let's see how we can co-create Nigeria's potential to develop her hospitality and tourism sector. Let's get to the table and let's talk together and not talk at each other.
Okay.
Without that, nothing's going to happen because every parastatal or every unit has their own. Talk about taxation. right? If we really wanted things to work, we'll understand that taxation is a tool to help development. It's not an end in itself. So when we tax the multiple taxes thrown at people in the hospitality business, almost like a punishment for actually being a business, then we think, do you really want things to work? So regulators coming to the table with private sector and agreeing to move this thing forward. Personal interests, I think, are also one of the big issues that we have killing our sector. A lot of personal interests over and above the common good. This is one discussion we've had time and again. The lack of concern for the common good is one of the biggest factors impacting us in Nigeria as a whole. If I think not just about my space, but I think about how it would help others, I think that would take a long, that would take us a long way. So in summary, we are at the table and we have the intention to make it work. And that's what we're seeing in Ghana and that's what we're seeing in Rwanda. They see the benefits of a system that works. Look at the Visit Rwanda destination project and what it has done for soccer, what it has done for football, I must correct. What it's done for football, what it has done for sports tourism in Rwanda. Intentionality.
Yeah.
And without intentionality, we can go on and on and on about this conversation.
Okay, now that I have the benefit of your presence, not that I don't know, but what is the nexus between tourism and hospitality industry, especially for the benefit of listeners out there? Can you just clarify, just for the benefit of listeners, the nexus? What's the link between hospitality and tourism?
If I had to say very simply, I would say tourism is about travel.
Yes.
People moving from one place to another, whether for business or for leisure. But those people need a place to stay, they need a place to eat, and they need a place to rest and be entertained.
Yes.
So that's the bedrock.
Okay.
So underlying the tourism industry is hospitality supporting the efforts of travel.
Yes.
Right, by providing the tourists with a place to be comfortable during their stay, whether for business or for leisure.
Which is another sector we need to pay deliberate and active attention to, isn't it? Tourism.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. People need a place to go to. People need the infrastructure to get to that place. I remember Obudu Ranch, that was one place I really wanted to visit, but when I got the opportunity, I was told it was a 6-hour drive from Calabar. I was like, imagine if it was a seamless
connection, isn't it?
It was seamless. Yeah, connection. And that would have made it easier. But these are the things that we need to talk about. Policies need to be put in place,
Okay, great. So you talked about travel. Some of them are planned, others are forced. And I'm going to Japa now. How much has the hospitality lost from Japa, or has it gained?
Japa is still quite a new phenomenon. I mean, it'll be really interesting to see 5 years down the line what the impact has been. Definitely in the short term, we've seen a loss of talent. Okay, so just a few weeks ago, I had a former student of mine was planning to move to Seychelles. Somebody has moved to Dubai, and there are opportunities in Ghana and Rwanda. Some people are in Kenya at the moment. So a loss of key talent, definitely that's in the short term. But there's also that opportunity has created, which is now we have more people in the diaspora who are actually seeing and experiencing hospitality from another perspective, right? So that's enriching the mindset. So think about the exchange of ideas and the exchange of knowledge and
expertise,
talent, reverse. And I'm excited about that potential. And I think over the next 5 years, we're going to see a lot of that, where people returning from the diaspora or even visiting can enrich the industry as it is now. They see ideas and they come here. We have a lot of people who are planning to open new franchises of what they've seen over there and what they can do. And the reverse is people in this country are taking our Nigerian local food over there and thinking about franchising, opening up bistros and cafes that are Nigerian. So Jackpot is enriching the conversation. It's enriching the industry, but we also need to be very careful about the talent we need to sustain the industry in Nigeria. That's being lost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So great. Belinda Nwosu, PhD. I was excited when your name popped up, and we were really, really more excited to see you attend our program, being a major resource going forward, and being a very bright guest today on the Discourse when we discuss hospitality, the industry, the challenges, and the gains, and the importance to our economy. So we're winding down now. You promised me you'll give me a Nigerian or African proverb and your music for the week.
Okay, that's great. I would love Criticized by Alexander O'Neill,
Okay.
because I'm actually using those lyrics to redesign a course in organizational behavior. I think he says some very telling things. So that's a song I would really like to hear again.
Okay, fantastic. And the proverb?
A proverb. So my favorite proverb, I hope I don't muddle it up, is about the lion. Only when the lion learns to write, can the hunter, no, I muddled it up, but it was something about, it's only when the lion writes his story that the glories of the hunter are just put to shame.
Great. So yeah, I was wondering if we could finish a show or program around tourism, around the hospitality industry, without talking about some interesting animals, especially like the lions and so on and so forth, isn't it? So have a wonderful week ahead of you, Belinda.
And that's it on The Discourse with Dr. Ken.